Hello, it's Whitney Wiley, and thank you for joining me for Love Your Work. And this is the series where we get to talk to people who are doing work they love. And today I have with me Stacey Ann Bennett. She is a senior business development director. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Development director. And she is in the world of STEAM careers. And so we're going to talk a little bit about STEAM careers, but we're going to start this conversation. Stacey, thank you for joining. How are you today? You're frozen.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I know you froze. I think we're good now. Thanks for inviting me, Whitney. This has been, I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm glad it's finally happening. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk to you and the group about, careers and science in general.
I think we were talking before, and you're saying it's kind of interesting times with the whole COVID and trials going on, and we're going to get to that. But let's start with what it is you do and what it is you love about the work that you're doing.
Sure. So what I do, really, I'll kind of go on like a holistic level and then break it down more day to day. So as you mentioned, I'm in business development. So basically what that is I interact with people in the biotech space. So really scientist level folks who are helping develop drugs. And what I support runs the spectrum of oncology drugs, central nervous system, now infectious diseases with COVID. So really the company I work with is what we call a CRO, a contract research organization. And those types of companies really embark on a collaborative journey with the biotech, and in some cases pharma. I personally only call on biotech myself, to help them get their drugs to market. So whether it's preclinical and they just have a concept or they have a molecule, or they're in clinical trials in patients, we can help them along that journey so that they internally don't have to have all of those resources to do it themselves, because it takes many years, it's expensive, it takes a lot of expertise, and one company just cannot do it all. So in the CRO space, that's really our goal, is to help our clients get to their end goal fast, efficient, and with solid data.
Well, as a consumer, I'm pretty sure we appreciate that,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how much time and effort goes into developing these drugs. And as we get more complex diseases and more personalized medicine, if you can think back in the day, you took Merck or the Pfizer's would make one pill and they give it to thousands or hundreds of millions of people. Really, now it's more about your biology, your genetics, your disease, your genetic markers, makeup, and personalizing a drug to you so that it has the best chance of curing or alleviating your ailments. So it's really evolved, and it's really a fun space to work in.
So yes, let's go there. How did you get involved in this? What kind of background, what did you study in school?
So I'll be 50 this year. So when I reflect back, and if we're talking to people who are in their early 20s, just graduating, trying to figure out what am I going to do, take comfort in the fact that you don't have to have all the answers right now, and you don't have to know where you're going to be in 20, 25 years, because it is a journey. And I think it's really important to, one, find something that you have a passion for and interest for. For me, it happened to be science. My 8th grade science teacher really taught well, made it interesting, and I just kind of naturally gravitated towards that and kind of stuck with it for the most part. And actually, when I went to college, I was a poli-sci major my first year. I went to school in Washington, D.C., so that's kind of what everyone did. But soon after my freshman year, I immediately switched to biology, because I was just like, this is where I feel like I'm home, I'm interested. So definitely follow your passion for any career you go into. And then how I got into a business development role, if someone would have told me in my 20s, I would have been more of a sales accountant type person, I would have said no way, because I'm definitely more of an introverted person in my personal life. However, in my role now, I really am passionate about what I'm trying to support and what I'm trying to
Right.
help my clients. It's not just, oh, here's, here's some glasses. Do you want to buy them? It's a technical sale. Very engaged with the client. I'm talking to high level scientists who love their job. So it's infectious, and it's really easy for me to feel their passion, like want to work with them to get to their end goal. So from college, graduated with a degree in biology. I thought I was aiming to go to medical school. So again, have a roadmap for what you want to do, but build in flexibility because
Yes.
life happens, right? And sometimes we're going this way and we zag that way, and that's okay. So I had children very early. My oldest is 28, so decided medical school wasn't the route. Had even thought about going back for a PhD at some point, but again, wasn't really something I was passionate about. I did, however, continue to take courses, not necessarily for a matriculated degree,
Mm-hmm.
but I would audit courses. I just actually finished up a mini MBA in biopharma just for continued learning. I mean, learning never stops, right?
Right.
You're always evolving. Things are, even now, times change so quickly that you have to keep pace. So when I decided not to go on to med school or PhD, I did work in the laboratory for about 8 years at both academic, hospital, and pharmaceutical type environments. And then in about 2003, I got into more of a business development role where I had accounts and called on clients and helped support them. And I've been with my current company now for about 8 years. I had 2 main roles. Right now I support central laboratories, so it's very fitting for our current climate in COVID testing. The company I work for is owned by LabCorp, so it's been really interesting to watch LabCorp develop these novel assays that are now helping diagnose both current infections and if you have the disease with the antibody tests. So I'm in that testing space, that lab testing space right now. And yeah, it's quite a journey, but I just kind of followed my heart and my passion. And I think if you do that, you'll end up in a good place.
So what is it that you find most interesting or exciting? And you've used the word passion a couple of times. So why are you passionate about the work that you're doing?
I love science just in general, like understanding on a very micro level how pathways work and proteins, folding, receptors. So if you're into that, you can take very deep dives with your clients into how does the drug work, what's the mechanism of action. Like you can be as high level or low level. Like if some people like different aspects of selling, like they're into it for the aspect of being a salesperson and closing. That's always fun. I love to win, but I really enjoy the science. And being in this field particularly, I call on from essentially southern San Francisco all the way to San Diego. And there are extremely innovative companies in the biotech space that are coming up all the time, that are being funded by venture capitalists, that are in collaboration with top universities like Stanford and Berkeley and UC San Diego. Or they have collaborative partners with the big guys like Genentech and Merck and Pfizer. So it's one of the things I love is that we're on the cutting edge of science. And, a lot of people don't know this. The majority of drugs that go through what I'll call the drug discovery pipeline, that typically takes, anywhere, depending upon the indication, from 5 years to 12 years to get from like concept to a drug on the market. A lot of them fail. They may work preclinically. They may have great toxicology profiles in animals, but you put them in a human, this is science, nobody knows. So that cutting edge mixed with the anticipation of, is this going to work? And again, that the people I work with love what they do, and they really want to produce something that's going to help people in the end, right? We're at the end of the day, we're helping Alzheimer's patients, cancer patients, Parkinson's patients, COVID patients. So it's helping without actually having that one-on-one patient doctor interaction that maybe I have missed if I had gone to medical school. I'm kind of contributing in a different way. And that's what I really love.
I like that. I like your passion, because I think a lot of people think of science as kind of dry, and it's like that's what other people do, and you just seem to exude an excitement about not just the science, but the possibilities, the end goal and the end game. And I think that's one of the things that we could all stand to use a little more of, is to look at the big picture about what it is we're doing, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly if you find yourself in a job that maybe you're not in love with at the moment, right? That there are aspects that you can look at the mission of your company or what the goals are and say, yeah, I can feed into that even though I don't like what I'm doing. And so the reason that I have this show is to talk with people who actually love what they're doing, so that those people who don't can say, I too could be doing something that I love. And whether or not it's a mind shift that has to happen for where they are, or making a bigger shift and going into an arena of where they actually have their passions, that's only for them to decide. So the other thing I loved is that you said when you started in college, you had a plan to go in a particular direction. You were studying poli-sci, and you changed your mind, and that's okay. And so understanding who you are and what you're about, and then being okay with following it's your life, right?
Yeah.
And I know you talk with young people about careers in STEM and doing work that they love. Can you talk a little bit about that and the impact that you enjoy having with people making decisions, particularly about STEM careers?
Yeah, certainly. And I think, back when I was in college from 88 to 92, I did feel like colleges prepared you to a certain level, but then it was like, here's your degree, go figure out what to do. There's not a ton of guidance, and we didn't have the internet back then and LinkedIn. And so I really feel like people need to, number one, like you said, understand what's going to work for them. And that evolves from when you're 20 to when you're 40 to when you're 50. So be open-minded.
And beyond.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a journey. So be open that you may change your mind, and that's totally okay. And, but for me, in helping younger people, one, I can think of my son. So my son is 24, went to UC Santa Barbara for physics. So he was always STEM, but more physics, math, whereas I was more biology type thing. So it really helped guiding him. And okay, when he first went off to college, should he do engineering? Should he do physics? I pushed for engineering because in my mind, I thought it would be more practical for a career, because I didn't feel like I would Google, what do you do with a physics degree? And it was more vague, and I am not in that space, so I couldn't really offer much insight to him. But at the end of the day, he followed his passion. It was physics, so he stayed with the physics course, and luckily enough, he was able to get a job applying that in some laser optics parts he's now making up in Santa Barbara. And then more recently, in my LinkedIn profile, I am open for people reaching out to me to just ask any kind of questions they want about my background. If they're younger, and this girl reached out to me who just graduated high school. She was going to Columbia, and she just wanted to understand, like, what is it that, like, you say CRO to people, they're like, I don't understand what that is. So find a mentor, someone who is kind of in the space that you're in, and just learn, pick their brain, and leverage your connections, right? It's never too early. In my LinkedIn profile, senior in high school, start putting it in there and start gathering your connections, because it may be beneficial down the road, and it may lead you down a path that you didn't even anticipate. Like, I love the phrase, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
There's things that we know, which is like this, and then there's things that we know we don't know. Like, I don't know how to fly a plane, but then the rest of it, like 99.9 of it in all the world is like, you don't know, you don't know. So engage with people, leverage connections, find a mentor. I think all those can only bolster and get to your end goal in a more successful way.
You're so right. And it makes a huge difference to have a mentor. And so whether you are watching right now and you're interested maybe in a career shift, or you have young people in your life that you know are interested in STEM, or maybe they haven't decided yet what
Mhm.
they're interested in, they should be exploring all sorts of opportunities so that they can actually figure out what they like. One of the things we talked about, Stacey, a couple of weeks ago when we were setting this up was this concept of kind of, as parents, trying to do the right thing, right? We are sort of pushing our kids earlier and earlier to make decisions about
Mhm.
what they want to do and what they want to study before they even had a chance to figure out who they are. And I think STEM careers often get lost in that
Mhm.
shuffle because parents are not, you talked about with your son and sort of pushing for engineering based on what you wanted for him, right? Which was a practical
Mhm.
degree that he could use to get a job. And he charted his own path. And that as parents, we have to trust that our kids can do that,
Yeah,
that they will. Then what we can do for them is help them with the resources,
for sure.
right?
And I definitely think, I have two boys, and I actually have four stepkids. And I was a young mom, so looking back, I definitely would have done things a little differently. I really find it interesting when we can start learning from our kids more than we're teaching them. But my older, he definitely charted his own course. It's not what I would have done, but we're different personalities. So
Right.
people, you have to give them the framework, the tools, everything that you have in your arsenal, so to speak. But at the end of the day, just like with my parents, like, I want to do my own thing. So we can't impose what we want. And my older son's a little bit older. He went to school when he was, 18, but
Hmm.
decided it wasn't for him, dropped out. Then for about 5 years, did odd jobs trying to figure out what he wanted to do. Decided to go back to community college, and then now he's entering his senior year at Berkeley. So who knew, right? Like, and I was having all this anxiety. What's he going to do? Is he going to be okay? So just releasing some of that anxiety
Yeah.
about all of it, and just feeling, if I follow my interest, follow my passion, it will work. If you try to force a direction that you don't feel in your heart, I think it may work, but I don't know if you'll be as happy, right? At the end of the
Right.
day, we work a lot as people. Some people, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whatever it is. So you spend a lot of time working. So you
Yeah.
want to make sure that you enjoy it. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? And even now, what I'm struggling a little bit with now is, we've been on lockdown here in California since March. So I'm used to seeing clients and having that level of engagement. And what's been a little bit more challenging is a lot more is on the phone, on WebExes. So
Right.
pre-COVID days, if we had a WebEx call, I really wouldn't put my video on because I just felt a little awkward about that. But now that is my way to connect. So, if it means I gotta get out of my PJs and put some makeup on, do the hair, and I think clients appreciate that too. So I guess my point is, things are always evolving, and everyone's going to kind of find their own path.
That's really cool. So you started in poli sci, and so let's go back before even the poli sci. And when you were coming up, what was the first job you had that, say, wasn't a babysitting
Oh.
job?
Um, so I was a lifeguard kind of late, like junior, senior in high school. But my first, so as I mentioned, eighth grade teacher really, I would say, sparked my interest. Um, then because I was going to had aspirations of going to medical school, in between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I interned with my pediatrician. I have
Okay.
asthma. So my pediatrician, I got very close with him because I had pretty severe childhood asthma. So I was a candy striper at the hospital he worked in. And then I did some research for him, basically doing histology, which meant they would harvest liver samples from patients, and I would process those samples and then look at them under a specific microscope. So I would do that over the summer. So that was really cool. And that's actually what led me to go into the lab, because I loved lab work. I like doing things with my hands, cooking, gardening, lab work. Like, it's all to me very similar. Like, you're following a recipe, you're following a protocol, and you have an end result, and then you read the results and you try to, okay, does this validate my theory or not? And then you kind of go from there. So working with him in the lab back, I guess that was about 89, 90 timeframe, sparked my interest in laboratory work. And that's actually where my first career was working at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, way back when we had the Human Genome Project. And that was like the big thing, like mapping the human genome. Like, we had never done that before, right? So in addition to working on a team that was mapping the human genome, we were focusing on chromosome 22 in particular, that for children who have a disease called DeGeorge syndrome, that part of the chromosome is either missing or it's translocated, like it's not in the right position. So it disrupts genes on that chromosome, and they come out with cleft palate, heart issues, and mild retardation. So we were helping identify the genes in that chromosome. So that again spurred my interest in laboratory work, and that was my first job. And then I continued in different labs for 8 years. So
that is a pretty awesome first job.
Yeah, it was. And actually that was, I graduated in 92 from GW, George Washington University. I took 2 years off because I had my first child. So now I had a degree, but now I had 2 years of really not working. Like, I was waitressing to make money, but nothing, career, I would say. So I had a lot of no's when I first tried to get into my first job where I was using my degree. So that was hard. Getting that rejection is never easy. But one thing I could say, and now being, more of a business development person, I do get no's. I don't want to talk to you. No one responds to your emails. They ghost you. You work really hard on a proposal, and 3 months later, they're like, sorry, we placed the work with another person, another company. As a younger, less seasoned professional, I would take that personally.
Right.
So one of my messages I want to get across today is, business is business, and you kind of have to have a thick skin and not be offended, and not take it so personally. And even when you lose, and by lose, I mean, I didn't win the business, there's always an opportunity to learn. So I always reach out, why weren't we a good fit this time? Were we not as competitive? Did you not feel comfortable with our capabilities or have confidence that we could do it? So getting that feedback, I used to be afraid, oh, we lost, okay, I'm crossing that person off. I'm never talking. Right. And it doesn't have to be like that. Hey, maybe next time's a better fit, and you develop and nurture that relationship.
Well, the other thing is, you don't know where that person may end up
I didn't
later.
get the job, or I didn't get this win.
Right? I'm sorry.
Exactly.
You may not know where.
Industry, I was just going to say, yeah, and my industry is pretty small in the biotech space, specifically like San Diego. So, I just had one customer at a specific account. I was working with at account X, and the next week they're at account Y, and they're like, oh, work with you there too. So you just never know. And there's a lot of reasons why people may say no that have nothing to do with you, right?
Right.
So
right. And that is such a good lesson to share, is that probably 99.9% of the time it is not personal. It has nothing to do with you. And the probably 0.1% of the time that it does have something to do with you, it probably still doesn't have anything to do with you. It could just be the other person's perception of you that may or may not even be true, right? So
Hmm.
it's important to remember that not take things personally, take your ego out of it,
Yes.
and be open, because people do move around, and the next time you meet them may be the opportunity that you really were supposed to get. So we
Exactly.
have to be open to that.
Yep. Totally agree.
So what was it that made you pick, since you were so into science, what made you pick poli sci as a major in the first place? Where did that even come from?
I know. I don't know. I think, I was a young freshman. I graduated high school when I was 17. Um, I kind of was the first in my family going off to a 4-year college. I loved science, like it was always in me, but I couldn't see like, okay, what am I going to do with this?
Mm,
So I went to, school in DC. George Washington University is littered with poli sci
yes,
majors.
yes.
And I did enjoy the classes, like I definitely enjoyed them. But my freshman year, in addition to taking the poli sci classes, I also took biology for freshmen and loved it. And then I was like, okay, I did well in the course. So I went to the teacher and said, okay, if I want to switch to biology, I kind of took the wrong course. I should have took bio for bio majors instead of bio for non-science majors. So they kind of exempt me, and I ended up working in his lab as a TA. So it all kind
Mm,
of just worked out. But, I'm kind of glad I did that, because I feel like I put more thought into it. Like if I just had chosen science right from a freshman year, maybe I just would have not been open to anything else. But taking poli sci, there was still like this nagging thing, I guess, a little, the little voice in your head that's like, are you sure? Are you sure? I'm like, what am I going to do with poli sci? I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to work in Washington. I'm like, what am I doing?
you're
So it
right.
made me question it. And I think it's good to continually, be on a path,
Absolutely.
but question it. Is this what I thought it was going to be? Because, you know, your dreams versus what happens in reality and what you think it's going to be like, they can be there can be a huge gap between them.
So let's play a little what if. Let's say, what if you had stuck with poli sci? Based on who you are now, what kind of job do you think,
Hmm.
or career do you think you would be in, based off of a poli sci background?
Yeah, I think, poli sci, at the time, I don't think I had any interest in going to law school, but now knowing what I know now and how the industry works, I think going into law school would be really interesting, and specifically drug patents,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
Because what's really interesting about my field is companies have a very short window to regain the investment that they've made in R&D. So you can imagine you have a small company. A lot of the companies I work with, 10, 12 people. So they outsource everything.
mm-hmm,
So they have to do all the research and development, preclinical, clinical, all on the hope that they're going to get a drug to market, number one. And number two, people are going to buy it. Like patients are going to use it. Doctors are going to prescribe it. Like that's a whole other issue than just developing the drug. So once you make your patent on a specific molecule, I forget exactly what the time is, but let's say it's 8, 10, 15 years. Okay, well, you haven't sold anything yet. It may take you 7 years just to get the drug on the market. So now
right.
you've chewed up half of your patent time. So then you want, I think it'd be interesting to make sure that other companies aren't pillaging your patent. So that's something that would be interesting. And, if you're so inclined to go into that path, I think it's only going to get more complex, going back to what I said before about personalized medicine
Right.
and having molecules that really are targeted. For example, in oncology, there's a whole space of biologic therapies coming out where, if you have cancer, they harvest your own immune cells. They isolate, in the immune cells, there's different types of cells. They isolate specific, let's say T cells or B cells, what have you, and they engineer them. I call them like Superman immune cells. They genetically engineer them and then put them back into the same patient they harvested. So now there's no rejection of,
Okay, right.
and then those specific cells hone in on the specific receptors on the cancer cells and kill just those cells, unlike a broad radiation or chemo, which yes, may kill your cancer cells, but as we know from historical, therapies, they also make the patient very weak because they just blast all of your immunity and you just feel very weak. So yeah, it's really cool stuff.
And it's pretty interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking you would be probably in very much the same space you're in, maybe in regulatory affairs or something, but I can see you bringing that same sort of passion and energy just from a different angle.
Yeah.
And I think that's a an interesting thing is one of the points you made earlier is about this being flexible, right? That you can have a path but be flexible. So I love that you have lived that, and not only for yourself, but like you said, with both your sons and their paths and what they were doing. So you've pretty much been in the same arena. You've been with your current employer 8 years. What were you doing in your roles before this?
So
kind of in between your first job and 8 years ago.
So, my first job at Children's Hospital, which I mentioned that I really started around 1994, that was on the East Coast. I moved to California, 96, and worked at UCI again in the lab. And then went to Allergan, which was a pharmaceutical company, again in the lab.
They make contact lens solutions.
Yeah, contact lens solution. They do the Botox. They do other CNS products. Now they got bought by AbbVie, I believe. But
okay.
And then I was just kind of, envisioning where am I going? I enjoyed what I was doing, but always questioning, okay, well, what's next? And I decided to go more in the business development role of the sciences. And that took me about a year to make that transition. Because, if you're in a job at that point, I was in the lab for about 8 years and I didn't have experience selling. I was doing laboratory work. So trying to convince a sales manager to hire me from a lab without any sales experience was challenging.
I bet.
It did take a year. So what I did to help bolster my case or my resume was I took an online sales course just to understand the basics of selling. And when I went on I also worked with a headhunter. And that's another piece of advice. I think headhunters can be great because they can help coach you through the hiring process and really help guide you and offer advice. So that really helped. And the other thing I did was I knew I didn't have direct sales experience, but I knew that I could do it. And I basically took the skills that I thought were my strengths in the lab and showed how they would correlate to sales, right? Organization, whatever it was. I had a whole host of things. And this was, again, going back to like 2003. So I used PowerPoint, but I printed out literally the slides and put them in like clear sleeves. And during my interview, went through with him almost like a sales pitch. I figured, well, I'm trying to get hired for a sales role, so let me sell myself. And I basically went through these slides saying, well, here's what I do in my current job, and here's how it's going to translate when you hire me for this sales job. And he went back to the headhunter and he's like, wow, I was really impressed with that. So, trying to do something that's going to set you aside and have you stand out from the competition. That was my goal. So that was my leap from the lab into business development. And from there, it became easier because once you're in that space, headhunters reach out to you, you just, more things open up for you essentially.
Right. Your whole approach to your career, I just find fascinating. It's pretty novel. And the people that I have worked with and run across, because the flexibility. The approach, yes, to have a path but be flexible, right? To take chances and to be about continuing education is so important. And so I applaud you, as I just think it's a wonderful approach that you've taken to your career. So you're frozen again. Miss Stacy. I don't know if I've lost you permanently. And we have lost you permanently. And I give you a chance to come back. We've got just a couple more questions that I wanted to ask. But as I was saying, the approach that Stacy has taken to her career is one that I think we all would do well with, which is to have a vision. I just believe you start with a vision for your career. You create a plan and a path, but you have to be willing to be flexible about how you go about it. And when your priorities shift, when your values shift, when there are changes, that it's okay to go with the flow with those things if you take the time to stop and think about it. So I'm going to give her another minute to try to join back. Thus far, I'm not seeing her join, but if you are in the midst of making a career transition, or you think you would like to make a career transition and you don't know where to start, give me a call or send me a message. I would love to just have a conversation with you to talk about what your options are, what you're thinking, a path that you could take to start asking the kinds of questions that you need to ask to help get clarity so that you can move forward with something that works for you. So I don't know if she's going to be able to come back. And so, and hold 1 minute. I think I did. I got a message saying that she was going to leave and rejoin, and she apparently still having problems doing that. So I am going to wrap up. Maybe what we'll do is a part two with her. We'll try again to wrap up the last few questions for this interview with Stacey, and I'll bring it to you on another day during the week. So I want to thank you for taking the time to stop in for Love Your Work. If you are loving the work that you're doing and would like to be featured on the show, I would love to have you. Send me a message and I will send you the link that you can use to schedule your interview. And if you're not loving your work so much, we can get together and have a conversation so that we can get you on the path of doing something that you love, or exploring what you're doing to see what you can pull from that. What can you draw from your current situation that you can love in the meantime of preparing for something else? So there's always a way. You don't have to be unhappy in your work. It is, as Stacey said, it's a huge portion of your day. And to be unhappy in that part of your life has absolutely an impact and effect on the other portions of your life as well. So thank you for joining me and have a great rest of your day. Take care.